Okay. Ugh. I'm at Summer Gamefest. Um, the show is now over. We had Jeff Keighley's stream yesterday. It was okay. There was some games that I was like, TMNT games, big one. The game that I've been thinking about a lot though is Stranger Than Heaven, for obvious reasons. The same reason probably people have been talking about it and will continue to talk about it, which is how weird that game is now, and also the decision to put Tupac Shakur in it, which has been an interesting one. I know there's a lot of kind of different perspectives on it, and I thought that I would give mine. I was a massive Tupac fan. I only say was because it's not in my rotation currently in the same way that someone like a Kendrick Lamar is, but I would say is like Tupac defines some of my musical tastes. Big part of why I love hip hop and rap music. Big part of why I look for kind of certain things in rappers and an artist as a whole. Not a perfect person, made some mistakes, made some very bad mistakes, but also put out some really enduring messages that have carried forward in the artists of today. You look at someone like Kendrick, and Kendrick is who he is because of Tupac Shakur. I think Tupac's legacy is a important one to preserve and to also expose new people to, I think. And the issue I'm having is it kind of gets both of those wrong. Like it doesn't preserve it well and it doesn't expose it well to new people. Tupac Shakur isn't in the mainstream cultural mind right now, even though he has had that staying power even after he passed away. There were albums released posthumously, um, Better Days being one of them, I think it was called. But since then, he's only showed up in ways that felt either exploitative or not quite what they should be to do right by that person. The obvious one is the hologram. Taking a dead person and using them as a kind of like an example of how technology has advanced, I think it's kind of rough. Like that shit, you don't do that. But let's talk about Stranger Than Heaven. So if you're not familiar with it, it's the latest RGG game. It has a lot of style. It has a lot of interesting ideas in it, potentially. It looks like the next evolution, potentially, of the Yakuza format. It's got a massive list of celebrities, primarily Asian celebrities, people from Japan, actors and that. But there are also a few names outside of, there's Snoop Dogg is in it. There's a few others as well, but in the trailer that they showed at Summer Game Fest, the big reveal was Tupac Shakur is in Stranger Than Heaven. And as part of that reveal, Snoop Dogg came out onto the stage and talked about how, they discussed it with Tupac Estate and they felt that this was a thing that they wanted to do. And I don't know, there's something about it that just felt, not something about it, I know exactly what about it felt bad because I've been talking to people about it. I talked about it on a GameSpot thing and I just wanted to say it in a place where it's just the only thing that I'm talking about as opposed to 10 other games and then the Tupac stuff. Um, and the reason I think it kind of isn't great is because it doesn't do right by what that person was known for and would conceivably do should they have been. I'm not going to say that what they would have done, because I'm trying to guess what a person who has passed away would have done in their career at a time when, you know, the world is completely different. So that's not fair. What I will say is it's not a thing that makes sense for Tupac. And you might be saying, why aren't you upset about Snoop Dogg? And the thing about Snoop Dogg is Snoop Dogg has transcended the medium he first became known for. Like hip hop and rap music and West Coast gangster rap is where Snoop Dogg made his name. But post that part of his career, Snoop Dogg has gone on to extend his interest and involvement into pretty much every other industry in many ways. He's like commoditized himself. You can go into stores and buy Snoop Dogg wine. You can go online and watch a Martha Stewart Snoop Dogg video. You can watch him stream. He streamed games every now and then. And also, he is in games. Like, they have Death Row games. And Snoop Dogg, because of that, he kind of is a brand. Snoop Dogg is a brand. And that's not surprising. There's loads of people, celebrities these days, that are brands. It's a kind of the way you get ahead in this day and age. You create a brand out of yourself. Mr. Beast, the brand. Snoop Dogg, the brand. Tupac Shakur didn't create a brand out of himself. He passed way before the idea of creating brands out of celebrities became what it is today. Like, obviously, it was always part of how a celebrity is made, but it wasn't crystallized in the way that it is now. You have young people who, the moment they show any sort of talent, are put on to turn this person into a brand pipeline. That wasn't how it was back then, because the internet didn't exist how it was back then, and that meant influence and reach wasn't the way it was now. Tupac Shakur is being used as a brand. That's what it felt like in his appearance. He wasn't there because it made sense, because this is what Tupac does. And I say that because if you put like a member of the Wu-Tang Clan in there, it makes sense, right? Let's say ODB. ODB wasn't the most, Shaolin, Asian cinema style person aligned to that kind of like media and that culture and that kind of stuff. But he was still part of a group that, broadly speaking, put itself close to that kind of cultural output. So it would make sense to put someone like ODB, maybe not as much, but RZA, Jizza, Old Dirty Bastard, Raekwon, any of those people. You put them in Stranger Than Heaven and you're like, okay, cool, I can see why that happened. Also, like, most of them are alive, but you can reconcile why ODB would be in a Japanese, drama game because of his involvement in Wu-Tang Clan. And I realized that it's not Japanese. Wu-Tang Clan isn't strictly Japanese, but there's enough of a proximity there that you can kind of make it work if you wanted to in your head. To my mind, I don't remember Tupac Shakur being involved in any sort of like Japanese or even Asian media, entertainment, cultural, artistic output. He was an actor. He appeared in a few movies. He was a writer. He wrote poetry. He was an activist. He went out and advocated for the Black struggle and people who came from poverty, people who had it rough growing up. And that is one of the things that kind of appealed to me. Like, grew up on a council estate, had not a particularly affluent childhood, difficult family situations, that kind of stuff. He was a person that appealed to me because of that. But I don't remember a single thing. Maybe I missed something in his, works that actually are an indication that he was into Japanese fiction, Asian culture, Asian drama, whatever it may be. But it doesn't work because of that association isn't immediate. It's not a natural connection. Whereas, and he, like I said, and he didn't make it to the point where you could create Tupac Shakur, the logo, and just stamp it in different places like you can with Snoop. And I don't begrudge Snoop. I think it's great that Snoop is doing that. Snoop is that kind of talent and he has that kind of presence and he has that kind of brand. I'm not mad about that. And in fact, I'm not entirely mad about Tupac Shakur being used in video games or other types of media posthumously. What I'm not down with is the fact that he's being used in a thing that just does not make sense. Now, if you took Tupac Shakur and you put him in Def Jam Rap Star 2, he's not a Def Jam artist. He probably had beef with a lot of people on that label. There's probably history there that makes it weird, but at least it makes sense, At least that makes sense. Even if you stretch it a bit and you put him in if he showed up for some reason in the next Wu-Tang Clan game, it wouldn't be the end of the world. If you put him in the next Def Jam fighting game, that's not the end of the world. Like, I think that works in many ways. And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I can understand that. I can get behind the idea that his estate saw this and were like, this is a celebration of, or this is the celebration of, or it is based on culture that he was in, around, defined in a lot of ways. Even if it's not like he wasn't taking part in street fights against Method Man, or like fighting Kendrick Lamar with, you know, a baseball bat outside a bodega, because that's what a Def Jam game would probably be this day and age. But like, you know, he didn't do that, but it's still in his realm. It's his space, you know? And that, if that happened, I don't think I would have a major problem with it, because I can make sense of that. And I can believe that the estate signed off on it. I can't, for good reason. This doesn't feel like the estate signed off on it for good reason. This feels like the estate signed off on it to make money. And this feels like he is being used as a stunt for Stranger Than Heaven as well, which not only is like upsetting to a lot of people who are fans, but also undermines what Stranger Than Heaven is. I guess I've spoken to a bunch of people who are not, they've been like, what is that game? And a lot of them aren't liking where this is going. Like Snoop Dogg, again, one of them is like, okay, that's weird, but I could see them doing something cool with it. And I'm not saying they won't be able to do anything cool with Tupac, but I'm like, you've lined them up back to back, you put them out, one of them's passed away and doesn't have the ability to consent personally to being in this thing, have the ability to check whether the material is something that he agrees with, is in line with his artistic beliefs, in line with his outlook on life. And because of that, you've left it down to the estate. And if you really look into the estate stuff, there's a ongoing legal battle between the estate and members of Tupac's family. I believe it is specifically his sister. The person who is currently in charge of his estate isn't a member of his family. It isn't someone that was known to be super close to him. It's someone that, for all intents and purposes, has been discussed, allegedly, being someone who looks to be taking advantage of Tupac's recognition factor and making money off of it. Which sucks, man. And I'm not saying that Snoop Dogg is to blame for this. I'm not saying like RGG Studios should have known, you know, is to blame for this. But I think collectively, there should have perhaps have been a smarter decision made here if the people in that room cared about Tupac Shakur's legacy beyond how he can make them money. I don't think there's a situation where you play Stranger Than Heaven and you experience what Tupac is doing in there, and it naturally pushes you, if you don't know who he is or what he stood for, to go and explore who he is as a character. Like, I might be wrong, and if I am wrong, I'm willing to put my hands up and say, whoa, actually, RGG Studios did right by that person. But I just don't think that you go into that game and learn about the things that he went through, the mistakes he made, the things he tried to do to make them right, the growth that he went to, the devolution that he went through, and how all of that manifested in a generational, once-in-a-lifetime talent that was a defining factor of a type of music that endures till today and is beloved by many. You don't just, how do you fit Thug's Mansion into Stranger Than Heaven? How do you fit Brenda Had a Baby into Stranger Than Heaven? How do you fit Dear Mama into it? How do you fit Still Ballin' into it? Like, every part of his musical journey, how do you fit that in there? Or how do you fit enough of it in there so that people look at it and go, oh, there's something going on with this person, I want to look into it. Maybe they will do it, and there's like a good way to do it beyond like, oh, here's a jukebox full of this person's music and you can switch between it as and when you please. That's why I say I don't think they're doing the legacy part of him right, or the preservation part of him right. The preservation part of it is like, would he have really done this? Is this something that he's naturally known for? I don't think, I've mentioned how I don't think it works there. The preservation part of it, I think preservation, it is keeping things alive in my mind. Like, there's different states of keeping things alive. You can just keep things alive, almost suspended in time, where it's still there. for people to access and people to get to. Like, you think of games, stuff like keeping an old game alive. It's making sure that when someone wants to find that thing, they can find it easily. And that's why game preservation is important, because technology rapidly changes and the games that we used to play are more difficult to play on modern hardware. So preservation for that is important. But there's also the idea of like preserving the soul of someone's work in a way that allows it to continue to live in the way someone's work like Tupac's could, or even like movie directors, writers, whatever it may be, in a way that, because it still exists and you are kind of creating pathways back to it through other means, it allows new people to discover that person and know what they were about and find a way to connect to it. And because of that, I think the idea of, keeping his legacy alive, preserving his legacy, and looking at that through that lens at Stranger Than Heaven, I don't think that works, man. I don't think you play that game and then go, I'm gonna go and figure out who this dude is. Maybe it happens for a few people, but I just don't think that's how it feels right now. It feels, like I said, like a stunt, like someone is being used as a marketing tool. And I don't know what the thinking behind that was. And I want it to believe that it's more than just how do we make money off this guy's work and his recognition factor, or how do we raise the profile of our game. I don't want to think the worst of people, but for me, that's the worst is currently how it feels. And like I said, I'm open, ready, and willing for it to be completely the other thing. And it's a reverential look at his legacy. He has an important part to play in this story that, will explore him or present him as a figure that is authentic to who he was in some capacity. And by doing that, creates that pathway for people who take an interest in him to work their way back to his core body of work and know who he was, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, his life and his death. But yeah, that's why I think it really sucks. That moment really sucked for me and for a lot of people. I know there's been people online that have been talking about it. I think I'm just sad about it more than I'm gonna hurt someone because of this. And again, it's not entirely just because he's there. I don't mind him being there if he was done correctly. I don't mind someone who cares about his work and him making sure that other people can still experience what he offered to the world and to music or writing, poetry, movies, whatever it may be, or even just social awareness and social subjects. My objection is it's done in a way where it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't even make sense for the part, you put him in a Def Jam game, you can channel the part of him that was an aggressive, almost conflict-driven West Coast rapper that would never back down from a fight, lyrical, physical, mental, whatever it may be. You can make that work for yourself because ultimately it is a piece of who he was turned into, filtered through a fantastical, ridiculous lens to be in a video game, but still it was a piece of who he was. I didn't see a piece of who Tupac Shakur was when he showed up in a Japanese period piece that is a video game. But I don't know. It's just weird. I guess the takeaway from this is if you saw that and are weird, what is this all about? And you don't know who Tupac Shakur is, don't let this be the thing that is how you learn about him. Go back and read about him, listen to his music. There's good stuff in there, there's bad stuff in there. Ultimately, it is evidence that a man exists that changed the world in small and big ways. And unfortunately, the modern era of capitalism has reached back through time, pulled him back out, and is now parading him around in a way that he probably would have been against. And I think people in his estate should have known or people around him that have any sort of power should perhaps, that are coming from a good faith perspective, should perhaps have thought a little more about. And again, I'm not, maybe there's factors behind this decision that I just am completely not aware of, and actually it's a good idea, and people who are involved can say this is why we did it and it makes perfect sense. I don't know. Maybe they have an opportunity to come out and say, and if it is truly that, I'll hold my hand up and say I was wrong. But for right now, I think it sucks. Anyways, I don't know if I'm going to do any more Summer Game Fest videos. It's been non-stop. I've been here all week, and the event is actually starting today. I literally just woke up, and the first thing I was thinking about was Tupac Shakur in Stranger Than Heaven. I went to sleep thinking about it. I woke up thinking about it. So I figured, let me not try and create one of these here's all the cool things I saw at Summer Game Fest videos, because there's millions of them out there, and thus far nothing's really blown me away. I've already written about and talked about stuff in other places, and I will continue to do that. But this is something that was important to me, and it felt like I would rather do one video about one subject matter, about something I care about, than a video about the 50 games that I saw, or 10 games that I saw, whatever it may be. But never know. I'll still maybe do that when I get back, if I feel like I've got a good collection of things, but this might just be it. Peace. Subscribe and all that business. Later.